Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Bobby Klinck, who is an intellectual property attorney. Welcome to the program, Bobby.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Super. Well, listen, I know that anytime we hear intellectual property and attorney all in one sentence, it makes people cringe. So give us a little bit of background on why IP, intellectual property, is so important for small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Okay. Well, I get that a lot, but you shouldn't make it, or it shouldn't make you cringe. Intellectual property is really just a broad term that identifies any kind of idea or something you own that's intangible. And the reason why entrepreneurs should care about it is, there's a couple of reasons. One, valuation experts that have looked at companies, especially here in the U.S., have said that depending on the type of company and then depending on the valuation expert, that intellectual property and the other intangible assets represent somewhere between 40 and 95% of the value of an American company. And the low end there, the 40%, are the big manufacturing companies, as you'd imagine, who, and I say big, they're manufacturing companies that don't have a huge brand name, but so a lot of their assets are the physical property, the physical assets. Entrepreneurs with newer businesses or entrepreneurs who focus on an online presence, coaches, all of those kinds of folks, you're going to be much closer to the 95% because your business is about your brand. Your business is about your ideas. Your business is about these intangible assets, these intangible things you have and own, not about some hard physical asset. So, that's the first reason you should care. And what I ask people is, how can you not have a plan for, not be thinking about your largest asset class? The second, well, if you have a question, but the second reason I would say is actually the online world has made it so that intellectual property issues can come up much more frequently.
Yeah.
Before we were online all the time, let's be honest. If I was a local brick and mortar store, chances are someone wasn't going to come and copycat my idea. And if they did and they were in some other locality, it really wasn't going to affect my life. And if I, accidentally used a copyrighted work without someone knowing about it, or, in my business, maybe someone wouldn't know about it. Nowadays, we're all online. So, people are doing business from one locality, but affecting the whole world. So it's easy for someone to find your work and copycat it and steal it from you. So you need to be protecting it. But also, if you make a mistake and step on someone else's intellectual property rights, they're going to find out about it. And you may get a dreaded cease and desist letter, or a lawsuit, or something else that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to deal with. So it's an issue you need to be thinking about and thinking about early in your business.
When you're describing that, it made me think of the old example. You may have heard something similar to it, but I think it really just it is spot on, where it's like the guy goes into the car repair shop and says, "Hey, my engine's knocking. I need you to fix it." And he opens up the hood and he looks around and he takes out a hammer and he pounds this one section of the engine, and he goes, "That'll be $100." And he goes, "What?" He goes, "I could have done that." And he goes, "Yeah, well, the $5 is for the hammer and the hitting of it. The $95 is knowing where to hit." So I think that really is so huge, describing intellectual property, right? Because it's so many times it's invisible, like you said, but you may not even know as an entrepreneur where some intellectual property is, even within your own business, because you're so used to it that you just feel like it's what I do. So what are some thoughts around that?
Well, so I think that's right. And I think it's, quite honestly, Mike, I think the big problem is a lot of entrepreneurs just don't think about it. And I can't blame them. I'm a lawyer, so I think about these things, but I also don't think about certain things that I should probably be thinking about with respect to marketing or sales or, other areas of business where, other folks are definitely more focused on that. But intellectual property, again, I mean, I think the big part is just understanding and kind of what are the different categories and what are the different places where you could have intellectual property. Because I think a lot of people know some of the big ones. You've probably heard of patents, which cover inventions. And the fact is that patents get way, way too much attention. For most businesses, patents are completely irrelevant just because you're probably not going to want to go through the process. It's the most expensive kind of intellectual property to get. And, more than 95% of patents that are issued never result in a dime being paid to anyone who owns that patent. So again, it's an important area in some businesses. I mean, if you're a high-tech company, if you're a pharma company, if you're a big company, they're very important and very valuable. But the other areas are where you have a lot more value for the more typical entrepreneur in an early stage company or an online presence. And that is first trademarks. So trademarks protect everything related to your brand. Trademark is an area of law that essentially protects anything that you use to designate the source of a good or service. So, and the source here means the company or the person creating it. So the most obvious is a brand name, Coca-Cola, for example. That's a trademarked name. But then also it's logos. So again, think of the golden arches of McDonald's. That's a trademarked logo. And then there is slogans. Just do it from Nike. Again, you say that word, everybody knows. If you see a shirt that says just do it, pretty much everybody automatically knows that's from Nike. So those are things that are very important and that entrepreneurs need to be thinking about. I think, Mike, I've noticed you have a trademarked name or various parts of your work is trademarked. So that it can be an important source of property rights. But really in that area, the mistake that most entrepreneurs make is they will spend so much time coming up with what they think is the perfect name. They'll brainstorm it, they'll spitball it, they'll market test it, and then they find it and they stop. And they don't actually go and say, hey, is someone else already using that name? And that is a huge mistake because guess what? If someone else has a trademark for the name you choose for your company, they're not going to find out about you at the beginning. What's going to happen is you're going to spend a year, maybe 2 years of sweat, blood, tears, and a bunch of money building your brand. And then if you get to be successful, then the trademark owner is going to find out about it. Then you're going to get a cease and desist letter. And then you're going to have to decide, do you want to have a fight, which was going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, or do you want to rebrand? Again, something you don't want to have to do after spending all that time. So that's an area where, entrepreneurs need to be thinking about that from the outset and just solve that problem from the outset. Because, if you're a relatively small company or a new company, you just can't afford to have a fight. So you need to avoid a fight there. Copyrights is another area of intellectual property. People have heard about those, obviously. Movies, books, any music, anything creative is protected. You get protection automatically. The most common example here for actually most entrepreneurs is with making the mistake of stepping on other people's rights. Way too many people will just go grab an image from Google Image. Google Images and put it on their website. Well, guess what? That's probably a copyrighted image, and you're probably infringing a copyright. And you may get a letter saying, take it down and suing you. So don't do that, especially
What about
today.
all of the ones you hear like that from, I don't know, I know Getty does, I've heard instances where you'll get the letter that says, this is and whatever. What you just described is obvious. I mean, don't just go right-click, save as. But what if you have done things the right way, so you thought? Is it just as simple as just taking it down and saying, sorry, I thought I did it right? Now, for instance, one thing that I do many times is I will get the image the right way, and when I save it to my computer, I will name it, whatever it is, boy with a ball or whatever the picture is, and then I'll continue in the name showing where I got it from so that I am reminded, yeah, there it is. So do you have to go that detailed, or when you put it on your website, also put a source, iStock photo, or what are some thoughts that way to make sure that you're doing it right?
Well, so what I would say is it depends on the license you get. So some licenses will require you to provide the source. Others won't. I'll just tell you, I mean, what I do, you just need to have some systematic way to know where your images came from and to be sure that you have the right protection. And so the way I do it, for example, I have a folder on my computer that says Shutterstock. So I know those are images I purchased from Shutterstock. Then I have another one that says Pixabay. So those are, from the free, license-free, free to use source Pixabay. So I have images saved there. Again, you just have to systematize it and have a way to know. Again, Mike, I don't know if you know of examples. I haven't heard a lot of people doing it the right way and then getting sued. Especially with images, that issue can come up more if you get big, mainly with software licenses. Often software companies, and again, this is not something that you or I have to deal with, but something that, if you become a startup and actually get very successful and you have lots of software licensed, some software companies may come in and want to do a software audit to make sure you actually are only using the number of seats that you have authorized. But again, that's a problem that, quite honestly, I'd like to have that problem, and I said, I would. But if you're a business, you'd like to have that problem because that means you're probably at the point of, make hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue a year. But, I think the important thing is just make sure you are doing it right. Make sure you are using the licenses. And again, you mentioned Getty. I mean, Getty's a perfect example. And again, I have nothing against them, but they aggressively protect their images. So if you were to go and get a Getty image somewhere without paying the license, and, I think you probably looked at them, they're quite expensive to get those licenses. They are going to come after you. They'll find it and you'll get in trouble. So, do it right by going either to the free sources or a place where you can buy them. Make sure you buy the right license. Because again, when you buy from a Shutterstock or something like that, there will be some licenses that give you the right to use them anywhere and everywhere, whatever. And then there are some licenses that are more limited. So make sure you get it and make sure you have documentation to show where it came from. And so that's the important part. There are other subtle copyright things that people do, Mike. You'll see people with podcasts. I will listen to a podcast and I hear, I don't want to say, maybe it's not a top 40, but a popular song on it. And I'm like, I know they didn't go and pay the licensing fee for that. And so that's a mistake a lot of people make as well.
Is there like a 7-second rule or a 3-second rule where you can use a sample of something and be fine? Or is it anything recognizable, you've already crossed the line?
Anything recognizable. Again, there might be some, fair use arguments, but if it's on a podcast, it's not fair use. And so fair use is the doctrine, the concept that, you can take certain snippets, for example, that's what allows people to do a book review and they can quote from the book in a book review because they are, doing something and using it that way.
Yeah, benefiting the book.
Well, and even if it's not benefiting the book, even if it's a critical review and you don't like it, our system is built so that can be done, right? I mean, so again, a song review. I mean, so if your business was to review songs, you would be able to do that and, pan it and do all those things. Quite honestly, I haven't seen that. I'm sure there are people who do those things who play them. You might have to think about getting a license depending, but no, there is no 3-second rule where, hey, if I play less than 3 seconds, I'm okay. If you play any part of a song, audio recording, anything else that is recognizable, you are potentially running into trouble and you shouldn't be doing it. So again, that's why if you're going to get music, you need to go to one of these places for free stock music. There are various resources.
So when these sporting events use all the songs, and I mean, they use 15, 20, 30 seconds of, very recognizable songs, what are they doing? Are they literally paying licensing to all these artists to use, like a whole litany of their, before this, game, I'm going to play, these snippets of songs. Is that how money is changing hands in those venues?
Well, so most likely what's happening there, and again, it would depend on the particular thing, but I can think of an example, and I know this actually not from my career, but from my personal business. I had some friends when I was in college who I had a lot of friends who were musicians, and some of them got signed and put out some records on a sub-label of one of the majors. And I can remember at one point I was watching Monday Night Football, and I remember it was Green Bay was playing. That's all I remember. And as it went to commercial, one of their songs came on, which was kind of funny because I think the song, they didn't play the lyrics, but the lyrics were, about, getting knocked down and getting back up again. So it was kind of funny because the quarterback had been sacked a few times. But the way that works is there are publishing companies where so the artist will basically have a deal with this publishing company that then maybe has a deal with another company. And so the way it works is effectively the broadcaster has the right to, or can go and pick songs, and then they pay a fee, which then gets distributed down through the line is how it works. Quite honestly, I don't know if they work it out in advance or if it's, it's probably not a contract on advance. They just pick and choose, kind of like nowadays with Spotify or anything like that. The way it works is people just get paid based on how people are using it, and they're paid by these services. So that's how that works. But again, if you're a small podcaster or something like that, you're not going to want to pay the fee that you're going to have to pay for that.
Just for your little podcast, when you could, in reality, just go to get some of your, free snippets and do it the right way. And, no one's going to go, oh, you know what? I was going to listen to your podcast, but you didn't have that 4-second intro of a cool song that I know.
Right. Exactly. So that's right. And I mean, you didn't get it free, or you can go to one of these sources where it's, $29 or something, and you get all these snippets. So there are ways to do that, which makes much more sense than trying to actually get a license to some popular song, which just isn't going to be cost effective. And again, it's one of those big problems where, you may not get caught if it's just your mom and your spouse listening to it, but if you get popular, you're going to get found out, and guess what? You're going to get found out, and then they're going to go after you not only for that episode, but for your whole back catalog of 200 prior episodes and all of the downloads and all. So you just don't do it. It's just not worth doing. Do it the right way to avoid a headache and avoid a big expense down the line.
Yep. Hey, let's wrap up with a kind of a broad thought, but if you could give an entrepreneur or business owner one piece of advice, regarding IP, what would that be? Well,
the piece of advice I would give them, it's kind of a couple of things into one. One is, if you're thinking about it, you're ahead of most people. So a lot of people just don't think about it. And so, or they only think about it in a very haphazard way. And so what I would say is, if you think about it and try to systematize how you're thinking about these issues, you will be doing a good job. And that's one of the things I really preach to people is, don't just do it on an ad hoc basis where it's, I'm going to do this one and I'm going to file a patent here, but you haven't thought about all the other issues. You should kind of take the time and it'll take a day of your life maybe to really think through these issues and come up with an overall strategy so that you make sure that you're doing it right, that you're thinking about the right issues, that you're spending your money in the right places, not the wrong places, and to make sure you're avoiding these potential pitfalls. And quite honestly, that you have the policies in place for, that can get you protection for free. For trade secrets, for example, you just have to take steps to make sure you're keeping things confidential. And if you do that, you can keep your CRM database. You can keep all these other really important parts of your business protected. So be thinking about it. And then the other piece of advice I'd give you is don't let the fear of it being complicated or an idea that you're not going to get it perfect stop you from taking action. Because some action is better than no action. If you can afford to hire an attorney to help you draft the plan and all that, great. But if you can't, go buy some books, go find some resources, do some online research, and you'll be better than if you did nothing. And so think of it as insurance for your business to make sure that you don't make the kind of mistake that could really sink your business, cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, or put you out of business entirely, which that's what IP problems are. They're expensive problems. So take some action now to solve it with whatever your budget is and work within that budget and get something done.
Perfect. Excellent advice that I think can transcend over a lot of areas of business. Have a plan, follow the plan, be aware, have a checklist, have a blueprint, get some advice. There's a lot of, you mentioned, getting books or whatnot. I know that a lot of the SCORE or the small business development centers across the country have some, even attorneys on staff where they'll give you some free guidance, maybe not do work for you, but, there's always something you can do. But when someone wants to finally say, let's just get it done and get it done right, how can they reach out to you and find out more about how you can help them with their intellectual property?
Okay, well, let me start with what they can do for free with me. You can go onto my website, and it's KlinckLLC.com, and Klinck is K-L-I-N-C-K. So it's K-L-I-N-C-K LLC.com. And on the website, among other things, you can actually find a copy of my book, The Entrepreneur's IP Planning Playbook, that you can get for free. And that book it's about an 80-page book. It walks you through the process of thinking through your intellectual property and creating a strategy. It's something that you can do yourself if you want to do it, and the cost, like I said, is zero. It's just going to be some of your time. If you decide you wanted to actually work with me and do something a bit more systematic, on my website there's ways to set up consultations. Consultations are free. Basically the way I do it is I kind of talk with folks and get an idea of what their needs are and figure out how I can help them best. Basically, my role is to serve as your strategy advisor. I'm not the one who's going to file the trademarks for you. It just doesn't make sense. We can get that done a lot more cheaply by some companies that will do it for $100 per application and things like that, which, I could never begin to match that. So I don't try, but I will help you kind of put your strategy together and then go out and execute it. We can figure out a way to do that through the website. I'll work with you and come up with something hopefully that's workable for everybody.
Excellent. Well, Bobby, thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful getting to know you, and as well as just picking up on some of these really specific pieces to keep in mind. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks. It was great.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.